Where am I?
Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Godzilla, turtles, babies, all kinds of things. Do a little stop motion on it.
What in the world?
That's right, you knew we were going to come around to this eventually, and especially if you watched the last episode of Between the Frames, because I said that this is going to be the Kaiju episode. Welcome to Between the Frames, my name is Captain McKay. This is the Kaiju episode. So as I mentioned in the last episode of Between the Frames, what I did was take a lot of behind the scenes style video of the Godzilla Big Bad Toy Store stop motion that I did. And we're gonna just look at some of that. You can see how I did some of it, how I made some of the little props and different things that were in that advertisement. And of course, along the way, we're gonna talk about a bunch of other Kaiju related stuff, because I decided we're gonna streamline this. We're gonna not have this video be all over the place, despite what you may have just seen in the opening. So I suppose I should give the backstory on that Big Bad Toy Store ad. It all came together really quickly, and there's a couple people I gotta give a shout out to right here at the start. Obviously, Big Bad Toy Store themselves. They were a pleasure to deal with, and answered any questions I had along the way, and just were encouraging and very, very cool to deal with. So hey, like I said at the end of the last episode, hopefully we do something again in the future, because I had a great time and I think everybody was really happy with the product that we put together. Also got a big major fat shout out to DGDX Animation. I believe they reached out to him first because he had done some work with them previously, but because of his obligation to his employer, it would have been kind of a conflict, that kind of thing. So he was like, hey man, I can put them in touch with you if you think this is something you want to do. And I'm like, this is Godzilla. Like, yeah, I want it. So yeah, major thanks to Big Bad, major thanks to my bro DGDX, that guy. So it's definitely like a nice little check on my bucket list. I was able to make something cool happen, and it played in movie theaters across America for one night only. So you missed a very exclusive video if you didn't go to that movie. But what am I even saying? Of course you went to go see Godzilla 2000 in theaters. But yeah, that's kind of how it all just came together. It moved very quickly once it did come together, because there was a deadline involved, and the movie released on November 1st, so they wanted it to be done a month prior to that, just so it could get all the approval and any kind of revisions and anything it needed ahead of time. But like I said, everything went really smooth, and I'm happy to have been a part of it. I think it turned out great. So you'll get to see part of that, and like I said, there's lots of other Kaiju stuff coming up in here, so stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let's get it rolling.
Oh, nice and clean in here, huh? It's, yeah. I mean, I'm in between projects right now, so I'm setting up for a new one. There's that box from Big Bad that they supplied me for the Godzilla thing I'm doing for them. And so I got some supplies in there I'm going to use for this video, but first I got to switch out the whole scenario. So I got kind of a dark blue backdrop, just some material I got. And I'm gonna drape it up over my, crowd backdrop there and push that against the wall. So typically I just hang my backdrop off the back of that, and it's usually only about, let's say 3 feet. It's actually that one down there on the floor right there. You see that sky backdrop that I've used in a ton of things. But I decided to go for something a little different. Yeah, you gotta upgrade. You gotta spend that cash to upgrade, you know what I'm saying? Spend that cash, that cost me like $13, and that's probably entirely too much fabric. I think I'm gonna have way too much. All right, well that was a process. I had to lay the whole thing, the whole backdrop down flat, on top of the piece of cloth and fasten it as tight as I could. That's as good as I can get it. But I think if I keep the focus shallow enough, you won't really notice the, you know, the flaps in the fabric. But, you know, I'll take some test shots, see what happens. Let's cut open this box, huh? Well, so here's everything that got sent. I am not sure if these buildings are going to be entirely too large for what I'm supposed to be doing here, but, you know, we're going to use them anyway. I mean, got them. And a new Gigan. That's right. The Showa Gigan wasn't actually in stock when this all got shipped. It became in stock like a day later, so if I had just somehow waited, would have just gotten the one I actually needed instead of like just another version of the one I already got, but oh well. The other Godzilla figures I'm going to use, I have the Godzilla and I have the Hedorah, so that should be totally fine. I doubt I'll need any more than, like look at this. So these might actually be a little more complicated than I was aware of. I mean, don't get me wrong, they look tight. I just gotta make them. So it's gonna take me a little longer. I might have to put off filming for a little while because I gotta just build everything, you know what I'm saying? So there we go. Got them all put together. 2 of each. This one and this one are actually the same, but they're like stackable. So you can change just how many stories you want the building to be, and looks good. This is actually really cool. And if you look at it from the back end, it actually looks slightly different. So each one of these does look slightly different depending on which side you're looking at. So, I mean, if you have them facing different directions, you basically end up with different looking buildings, which is cool. This one is actually like angular too, which I do like. I think these would all look good with like a touch-up paint job, but I'm gonna leave them stock just for this video because, you know, the whole point is to showcase actual product. What I like about these is they're meant for like Gundam weapons. So like some of these open up, like a couple of these open up actually. And not the stackable one, but this one does too. From the other side, I guess. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, those are really cool. I mean, these were, I think they were on sale for 20 bucks when I found them. I don't know how much they are normally. They might be like, I don't know, 30? I'm not 100% sure, honestly. But like, if I found these for like 20 bucks a piece, just anyway, I would have bought them just regardless because I think these are actually really cool. I'm lucky enough that they sent them to me for this video. But like, even if I had never heard of these before and I just found them, if I saw these for 20 bucks, I'd probably just stack up on a couple. And here's about how they compare with the Gigan figure. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pretty good height. Well, I'm not one of these sticklers for like, they're out of scale. So like, obviously, you know, this little tank is, it would be much larger with buildings this size. It'd probably be about like that long and maybe like that high up off the ground. But, you know, who cares? This is a stop motion project. This is not a exercise in correct, perfect scaling. And plus, this Gigan would actually end up being like relatively larger or smaller based on, you know, Millennium Godzilla monsters are different sizes than Showa, and those are different sizes than Heisei and all of it. So I don't even know, man. Just let me play with my toys, will you? So I got a little bit more of this to shoot, but I've basically finished with everything that I think is going to be needed. But man, it's been a while since I got this Millennium Godzilla out. This is really, really nice. This is actually the first SH MonsterArts figure that I bought personally. Batman got a couple of these before I did. He had like the 94 Godzilla and the Space Godzilla. And that's kind of what made me decide, like, yeah, you know what, these figures are great. I need some for myself. But yeah, this was my first one, and it's still one of the ones I think I like the best. And then Hedorah is actually a lot of fun. I never really expected to be able to get too much animation out of him, but you know, he actually poses around a little bit better than I thought he would. And then of course, Final Wars Gigan, he's great too. He's tough because like all of these like spike pieces on him are pretty loose, so like it's easy to like knock those aside and not have them really like line up with your last couple of pictures. So if you're animating them, you just got to keep an eye on that. But other than that, I think this turned out really good. I made this out of a just one piece of what do you call it? One project panel. Put some like wooden like strips down for like the edges of the road and everything, and sloppily painted some road, you know, lines on there. I mean, most of the shooting is done from like down here, so at least you don't really pay much attention to how sloppy that looks, but still, I like this set. Here's the destruction pieces I made, just little pieces of, you know, just scrap foam basically that I just all glued together and, you know, cut shapes out of and put them down. This is actually one of the ones I like best. It's like a flat piece of that really thin foam that I just glued down a bunch of like scrap pieces of the insulation foam that I use for all my dioramas, as well as some of that knitting grid. And what I did actually was spray paint the whole thing. After it was all glued down, I did spray painted the whole thing like black. Now typically you're not supposed to use spray paint on this kind of surface because it eats away at the foam, but I actually like that for this because it gives it that textured look that you want. And it does the same thing here, and that way when you dry brush over it, you get a lot of cool little details and cracks and just, you know, some real good texture that you wouldn't get normally if you just painted it flat. So I love this. This you can just lay down anywhere, and it's like, you know, let's say you put it in front here and then you shoot from in front, and it looks like you've got like a whole bunch of like destroyed rubble and, you know, building components and everything in front of them. So yeah, really cool. I really like how this turned out. I'm actually going to send it over to the people at Big Bad to see what they think, and hopefully the revisions are pretty light and they like what they see. I didn't think I was going to end up using the winder rig for this fight scene, but it turns out it's actually coming in pretty handy. The reason being because Biollante here, all of her vines and like little, you know, mouth pincer chomp things, whatever they are, you know, kind of looks like the plant that comes up to get you out of the pipe in Mario Brothers. They're all like sculpted to be a certain way. It's not like a bendy wire. There are joints in it, so you can't just like extend it out all the way. But if I wanted to make it look like it's extending, I kind of just do this and then I animate it kind of like flying. And then I end up just taking that background piece and shifting the whole piece. So that way the buildings are moving in the background and this is just kind of twisting to give the illusion that it's moving. And you'll see what I mean. Yeah, not bad, huh? Turns out, yeah, I can use this for stuff I didn't even plan on using it for. And it'll paint a good illusion, I think. Alright, here comes a new challenger. So this is the Super 7 Ultimates Wave 1 of Toho Ultimates. You got Godzilla and Biollante. Now this is actually a rose form Biollante. This is the earlier version. There's not really a lot of merchandise for this version of Biollante. I think most times this gets overlooked in favor of kind of the giant monster version of Biollante, which like most people probably think of when they think of the character. Like SH MonsterArts did that version. And it looked great. I never bought it because it was just expensive and enormous and I just couldn't justify it at the time. But from everything I've heard, it's really nice. Well anyway, these were solicited like early 2022, I want to say, and people started getting them in hand in mid 2023. I can't remember, it was like summertime, I think. And opinions of these were kind of all over the place. I think some people were maybe expecting more. Other people were let down by certain things about this wave. I'm gonna just throw my hat in the ring here and see kind of like, you know, what I can offer to the discussion. I mean, I know it's been a little while now, but let's get into it. So I think one of the things that people weren't really into about these is that they weren't like super detailed in terms of like movie authentic accuracy and all that kind of stuff. And while I think there is some credence to that, I also do think that Super 7 in general has always done like a more stylized
version of whatever the character is that they're making an action figure. Like, I've had experience with Super 7 from like their TMNT figures and some of their pro wrestling stuff. And while I always like those figures, there's always been their own element of like, you know, kind of artistic liberty that they've taken. So I think that's where some people had their issues with it. I've seen people say that Godzilla is a little too glossy, and probably the same for Biollante too, I'm not sure. But like, that I can understand. Like, I would kind of prefer if these were a little more matted, and that did get taken care of on later releases. Like I said, this is wave 1. So there's still plenty of time for like growing pains and different things. And you know, Super 7 especially, I've noticed, has improved as they've gone on in later waves of their series that they do. I go back to the TMNT. When I reviewed Raphael from wave 1, I noticed he had like a few minor like QC things, like some really tight joints, and like the heads and hands don't switch very easily. But by the time I got to Donatello in wave 4, that was taken care of and everything was great. So I anticipate that with the Toho Ultimates, that'll probably be the same situation. And in fact, I can say from having Series 2, that has in fact happened. There was also an element of people just not really wanting to justify the price point. It was like 85 bucks a piece, and they were saying like, well, you know, the SH MonsterArts ones are more expensive, but they're also more detailed and more posable and everything like that. And again, something I could say to that respect is like, well, if you don't know what to expect from Super 7 initially and you get this, then yeah, you might be let down by that. For me, like I said, having collected some Super 7 stuff in the past, I kind of expected what I was going to get, and that's pretty much what I got. And one of the other things that I heard people say about this wave was that there was some QC issues as far as like the joints, like being loose and like everything kind of being really like, I don't know, not put together very nicely. And I can only speak on behalf of these two figures that I have. I don't have that issue at all. Like, I think one of Biollante's leaves is a little loose, and I have like one tentacle that's like, you know, if I hit it the wrong way, it'll fall a little bit. But the rest is pretty decent. Like, I mean, I don't have too many issues with loose joints or anything like that, at least not anything beyond my own ability to repair it. It could just be a case-by-case basis too. Like, all I know is that from these two, like, I made a stop motion of these two, and that probably means that I've moved both of these figures more than pretty much anybody else that's ever handled these figures, except maybe Kyle Wadiga, the designer of these figures. So like, you know, I move these a lot, and I don't really have the loose joints that people are talking about. Everything is fine on mine, so you know, might just be a case-by-case thing. So yeah, well, I guess I can understand the critiques of some of these. I can also basically say that I knew kind of what to expect, maybe better than some other collectors knew, and that's what I got, and that's why I'm satisfied with it. Some of the minor nitpick stuff I've seen people say is like, well, why doesn't Godzilla have like an articulated jaw? Why did they just make a closed mouth head and an open mouth head? And to me, I don't care, first of all. Like, I mean, when the figure was solicited, that's what they showed. They didn't show an articulated jaw, they showed the two heads. So like, you knew that's what you were getting. Why are you complaining about it? But also, Super 7 has always done that. They've always preferred kind of like the aesthetic of the sculpt over the articulation, which is why, you know, even again, mentioning the Turtles, like, they don't have the double jointed, double articulated legs and arms and, you know, stuff like that. A lot of the stuff that modern action figures have as far as articulation, Super 7 doesn't always include that. They prefer just the overall aesthetic of the figure to kind of speak for itself on that level. And again, if you knew what you're getting into ahead of time, you could go for that. If this caught you off guard, I mean, I don't know how it caught you off guard, because you saw the same renders and the same prototypes that I saw, so, you know, I don't know. I hate to be that guy, but a lot of it is down to people just complaining too. I mean, like, the same people who are ripping on these for not meeting the standards that they've set are also saying that SH MonsterArts is like not worth the money anymore, and like all the other figures that are available are just not as good as they should be. And you know, there comes a certain point when some of these collectors just have to face the fact that they're just never going to be happy with anything that's on the market. So anyway, this is Wave 2, which I just got in hand about a month ago, and I think most people would agree that there are improvements on the first wave. Godzilla is a more matted color now. There was the burning effect that was added to him, like as far as like all the orange paint and the smoke effects and everything, as well as the kind of translucent orange on his back spines there, which I think looks cool. I think it was done to good effect, and you can see there was kind of like a transitional effect going as it goes into his tail and begins to look like the regular color. But overall, yeah, I think that they did learn from some of the feedback or some of the issues that they may have had internally with Wave 1, and they applied it to Wave 2, and I think it shows. Mechagodzilla, I can't really say anything all that bad about. I mean, I guess if I had my one kind of critique, is that there's this backpack thing, the Garuda, as well as his actual back plates that, like, when you switch them, you know, you can put his back spines back on. They fit a little loosely, but again, that's something that I can pretty easily fix, so I'm not all that worried about it. But I like the way they did the chrome. I like the way they did the color scheme on Burning Godzilla. I do wish maybe it was a little bit brighter in the chest, but the legs and the lower body look pretty good, and like I said, the spines. These smoke effects are not everybody's cup of tea, but SH Monster Arts did this when they redid the Burning Godzilla, which I didn't get because I got the first version a while back, so like I didn't need that one. But these are not bad. I mean, it's tough to do smoke in any kind of like action figure setting, I think, without having it kind of look, you know, maybe a little too opaque. I think they did the same thing when they had Storm Collectibles did the smoke effects for, you know, Mortal Kombat smoke. And, you know, for that reason, I didn't really use them on that figure. Now this, I'll use them on here because it's a, you know, it's just something to set the figure apart from the earlier version. And plus, it's, you know, kind of a selling point. Now these I'll probably use on this figure because it sets it apart from the MonsterArts version I have, the first release that didn't have these, as well as it's, you know, kind of just a part of the overall presentation. I think it does look pretty good, and I can also tell you that some of the paintwork overall has improved since Wave 1. So here's kind of what I mean about some of the paintwork. One of the issues that people I think had with Wave 1 was that the teeth looked like it was kind of like a little too sloppy as far as the paintwork, you know, where they just kind of like globbed on the yellow coloring for the teeth, and it just looked a little too much like a solid, you know, just streak. But in Wave 2, you can tell that they took their time to actually like add a little bit more red in between the teeth and paint the teeth more individually. To good effect, I will say. I think this looks much nicer than this. As well as the eyes on the Burning Godzilla, I think they look really good. You know, with the kind of like the red and the yellow and the iris and stuff like that. I really dig that. So here's where I think Super 7 might actually stand out amongst its peers in the Godzilla, you know, roughly 6, 7, 8 inch action figure sphere. I don't know, that sentence didn't make sense, but bear with me. I think they're going to stand out when they do more unique things. I think there's a lot of movie purists who just want things to look exactly like they do in the movie, and they got no room for any kind of creative license or anything like that. And those, I think, are probably some of the people who are not happy with the Ultimate line in general, is because they're designed to be a little bit, like I said, more stylized, more creative license, more of that kind of stuff, and it's maybe a little bit too far from the source material for the purists. However, in terms of just fun, pretty cool looking collectibles, I think Super 7's got it locked in, and here's what I mean. Now this is the New York Comic Con Heat Ray Godzilla. So you can see it's basically just the Series 1 figure with blue dorsal plates lit up for, you know, his radiation atomic breath effect, as well as the whole beam coming out of his mouth. Now this is an alternate head with the beam permanently attached, and the other head he comes with is the open mouth head from Series 1. So you're basically just getting the same figure minus a couple accessories, but with the addition of the glow-in-the-dark back plates. They do glow in the dark, by the way, and the beam attached to the head. Now the issue I've seen people have with this is like, well, why didn't he come with the beam in the first place? Well, two reasons. Number one, nobody said it would, so like, why are you looking for something that wasn't advertised? And number two, when he uses the beam, he always has his back plates lit up. So people, again, the people who are like looking for movie authenticity are going to want this to go with this. So if the beam came with that other version of Godzilla, it wouldn't have made any sense because the backplates aren't lit up, and it would have been, you know, I'm sure there would have been pandemonium in the streets among fandom. But I think doing this as an exclusive worked fine because, like I said, you didn't have to be at the show to get this. You could have just ordered it after the fact and they, you know, you would have just got it. I was at the show and I got this, and I, you know, to me it's like a memento of being at New York Comic Con and seeing like all the stuff that they had on offer, but also just having fun with this figure when I got home. So this is what I mean when I say like fun stuff. I'm a sucker for gimmicks, so a little glow-in-the-dark Godzilla on the shelf, I'm not going to be mad at that. So I think now we're moving into probably the runaway hit of the Super 7 Ultimate line. Now this is the Thirsty for Blood San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, and this is based on the Dark Horse comic cover by Art Adams. I think they did a great job with this. Dark Horse Godzilla was an interesting phenomenon in the mid-90s when Godzilla was kind of like, he was on the periphery of American pop culture, but he hadn't quite reached the level of fame that he would when the '98 movie came out, or infamy, I guess, among fans. But this, I remember having this comic, I still have it, and I remember just kind of reading through this, wondering, wow, why is Godzilla so bloody? What's going on? But, you know, it's just a really striking looking figure. So they made him a completely different color. They made him the green that he was in the comic, with the bright yellow nails and the red blood paint coming down his chin and like out of his nose and everything. The point of the comic is that Godzilla was like poisoned or something, and like so he was bleeding and foaming at the mouth and all this. Oh, it was good stuff. But this, in my opinion, plays to Super 7's strengths. When they're doing kind of like interesting one-off little stylish things like this, that's not going to piss off all the movie purists and all the, oh, it's not screen accurate people, because this is just them doing something. They're paying tribute to some cool part of Godzilla history that usually gets overlooked. So at the moment, this is definitely my favorite in the Ultimate Godzilla series so far. I love this figure, and I think, you know, even the harshest critics of the Super 7 Toho Ultimates have a soft spot for this figure. I kind of compared it to like the NECA NES Godzilla, where it was just something so off the wall and so specific that you kind of have to appreciate it for just like how much of a risk it was to take, you know, because you know, you could have made this and nobody would have cared. But by and large, people really reacted pretty well to this, and I'm happy to see it because I really think this is great. So that's kind of where I stand on the line right now. I do think there was, you know, some initial minor nitpicks that I would have had with Wave 1 that it seems like they're correcting going forward, which I do appreciate the growth. I think that some of the standouts are when they take risks, like with that guy over there, the Dark Horse one, and when they play into the gimmick kind of stuff that's like, you know, the glow in the dark and all that kind of stuff. That's always been kind of a interesting part of figure collecting in general, but also is just kind of something that appeals to all-around toy collecting more so than necessarily like Godzilla-centric kind of stuff. That said, Wave 3 is coming soon. It's Destroya, which I did not get just because it's massive and I already have the MonsterArts and I didn't know where I would put it. But it's also the Meltdown Godzilla, which looks like when this guy melts down at the end of the Godzilla vs. Destroya movie, he's on screen for like less than a second in that form. So again, kind of similar to that Dark Horse one, where it's like, why would somebody make a figure of this? But somebody did, and it kind of looks awesome. So I'm excited. I did see it in person at New York Comic Con, and I'm excited to see it again up close when I get my own. And then Wave 4 is Space Godzilla and Mogera, which I did get the Space Godzilla because I never got the earlier MonsterArts versions. And I think the sculpt looks great. Hopefully the paint and the, you know, the detail and stuff comes out looking nice. And then they just released a pre-order for the -1 version of Godzilla that just, that movie that just came out as I record this. So I did pre-order that, and I'm excited to see what they bring to the table with that. The line across the board is not everyone's cup of tea, as has been talked about on, you know, at great lengths on social media and stuff. But if you can accept the fact that A, it's not going to scale with your MonsterArts or your, you know, NECA or Haya or whatever else you got. B, it's a stylized line. It is up for interpretation, and there are stylistic choices made that, you know, aren't going to necessarily tick the box of screen authenticity that you might be looking for. So, you know, with that caveat, if you're looking for screen authenticity and just absolute detail down to exactly, you know, the specifications of what you've seen on your screen, these might not be the ones for you. I just gotta, you know, let you know. I will say that the people who are looking for that have had their issues with MonsterArts too. And so they've moved on to Haya, some of them, or some of them have just like given up on the articulated stuff altogether. Because when you buy something like a non-articulated, either an X Plus or a statue or a vinyl or something like that, you don't have to worry about things like articulation cuts being put in and compromising your screen accuracy. Stuff like that, you know? But yes, overall, I like these. I'm interested to see what comes out in the future, and it's just one more line for Godzilla fans to, you know, take or leave at their discretion. And thus far, I'll take more. I'm pretty happy with them. Moving on to MonsterArts. This is Gigan. This is the classic version of Gigan from the Showa era. Now they've done a Final Wars version, which I actually did the Big Bad Toy Store animation. That's the one I used because that's just the version that was out at the time. You know, if I had waited like 2 days before I started that animation, I could have just gotten this one. I would have liked to have used this one, but this one just wasn't available at the time. So, you know, the Final Wars one worked for that animation, but this is the version of Gigan that I've always preferred. The classic 70s, you know, big kind of mechanical parrot with a chainsaw on his chest Gigan. This guy looks ridiculous. I love him. He's a very plain release for like the MonsterArts line. He doesn't really come with any accessories because, I mean, Gigan didn't really do anything in the movies besides just have a chainsaw on his chest and, you know, kind of just look like this. So to that effect, they nailed it. People were not really super thrilled with the price point on this one. I think a lot of people felt he was a little too expensive for what he brought to the table.
And, you know, to an extent, I can agree, but I will say that this is one of the cleaner figures I've bought in a long time. He's got, like, really nice paint apps. There's really not much issues that I can see on my, at least not on my figure. The articulation all works. People have had issues, I think, with, like, you know, the function of the wings. Like, you have to kind of, like, pull them apart from the body before you pull, like, you know, pull them to the side. Some people didn't know that and they ended up breaking the wing. I'm just going to leave mine alone. I'm not going to mess with the wings being out like that because, yeah, frankly, I just don't want to push it. But, you know, this is basically like as perfect of a Gigan figure as I could have hoped for. And especially now seeing that 1972 Godzilla that they showed at New York Comic Con, that I showed in the last Between the Frames video, like, that's gonna look great with this. They got a Jet Jaguar figure that they showed that I'm excited about, and I'm hoping that that means my boy Megalon is coming. I'm sure he is. I just can't wait. But yeah, I mean, this figure, let's call it what it is. It is expensive, but I do believe that this is probably the best that Gigan could have ever looked, and probably the best Gigan figure we've ever gotten, in my opinion. I'm sure some people probably prefer the Final Wars version, but you know, to me, I'm just a big fan of the classic one. So I like this. And now we move into a franchise that I was ignorant about and ignored for far too long. But here is Gamera. This is the 1999 version from Gamera 3. What was it called? Revenge of Iris or Return of Iris? I don't know, something like that. But this is the third of the Heisei Gamera trilogy, which, you know, they were made in, like, I want to say like 95, 96, and 99, I believe. Something like that. I don't know, don't quote me. I hadn't seen these movies until this past year, or maybe a year and a half, I'm not entirely sure. Me and Kaimo Films did a whole conversation on his channel about these movies after I had just seen them, and my consensus at the time was that these were excellent kaiju movies, excellent giant monster movies. Probably, I would say that this trilogy on the whole is probably just as good as some of the better Godzilla stuff in terms of its quality and just how compelling it is and just how genuinely engaging and good it is. I like them a lot. So when they re-released this figure with some improvements from the original version, I was like, well, okay, now I need to get it. This is about the same price as Gigan. You can see that he's smaller and he doesn't move quite as well, but he makes up for it in the amount of details that he comes with in terms of his accessories, which I'll get into. So he comes with this piece here that you can put on the end of his hand, because at one point in the movie he actually loses his hand. So they give you that option. You can just pop the hand off and put the stump there. And, you know, just, you feel for the guy. Alright, actually I'm lying. It was supposed to go higher on the arm above the elbow. I was wondering why it was so hard to pop into the edge of the wrist, but that's because that's not where it goes. So, yeah, it actually goes here. So, his grievous injury is actually much worse than initially suspected. Sorry, bub. That's alright, because he gets a power-up in the form of a firearm. Not like a firearm like a gun firearm. I mean literally an arm that's fire. Like, come on. Look how tight that looks. So then basically his whole body comes apart, and you can replace his arms and his like legs and his tail and everything with these flight mode parts. And this is really, really cool. Like, these don't really move. It's kind of just like, so you can swap them out and then just have him be like in his flight mode. I mean, you can still get some like head and mouth movement and stuff, but these are just kind of like static pieces that plug in into the holes that were left behind by like the legs and the arms and whatever. But yeah, this is seriously like really, really cool. Now to me though, like when I picture Gamera flying, I picture that kind of like spinning disc thing that he does. So I don't remember if this is kind of more iconic or if that is, but like I know he does both. So like just being able to have a flight mode dedicated with like a stand and everything too, with the pieces that all swap out, like this is just like, come on, this is really good. So yeah, I mean, both of these were around the same price, give or take. Gamera comes with way more. I think that comes from being a re-release of an earlier figure that probably had all those parts. You know, like as far as what you want out of these figures, I don't know what you'd want Gigan to come with to justify the price. Maybe people were just like hoping the price would be a little lower. I mean, I get that. Everybody wants to pay less for the same exact thing, but you know, in my weird, sick, twisted brain, all I have to do is tell myself like, well, I only got to buy it once, so I better spend the money, and that's why I don't have any freaking money. But this Gamera's got me thinking, like, do I want to buy Iris? That's an expensive figure. I don't know. And initial reviews are basically saying like, once you get it put together, it's kind of like
a statue almost. Like, I mean, it does pose the tentacles and stuff, but you don't want to move them too much because they pop off and fall apart and stuff like that. And I'm really not trying to deal with that, so maybe I'll skip Iris for now. There's actually a Gamera that also came out recently. It's based on the anime series that came out a few months ago, which that figure looks really good too, so I might double up on Gamera. We'll see. I gotta stop talking about this stuff because it's gonna make me just want to keep spending money on it. But yes, both of these I definitely like for very different reasons, and you know, you're gonna get very different amounts of accessories. That is to say, a lot and none. But with that said, I still like them both. All things must come to an end, unfortunately, and that includes this episode of Between the Frames. Now, hopefully you enjoyed what you saw. It was great kind of going back and watching this footage again for, you know, just kind of revisiting the stop motion ad and seeing kind of the process of like putting the props together and the buildings and things that got sent to me for use in the video, which by the way, were pretty cheap. Like I said in the video, I would have probably just bought some if I knew they existed anyway, but I've never really researched any of that before because I've always kind of made my own buildings. So if you're somebody who doesn't really like to make your own buildings or maybe just doesn't know how, that's a pretty decent option you got right there. Definitely want to take a moment to thank all the Patreon people right here. That's right, you know who they are, you love them just as much as I do, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. As always, they would have gotten to see this early as well as anything else, and plus there's some other stuff that goes exclusively to the Patreon that never makes it to YouTube. So if you love looking at, you know, all this, there's more to be found. On Patreon specifically, not like OnlyFans, at least not yet. I don't know, we'll see what 2024 looks like. Thank you for watching, my name is Captain. Maybe, I don't know, if there's money in it. Thank you for watching, my name is Captain McKay. Hope you enjoyed what you watched, and we'll catch you in the next one. Later on.
That's crispy.